Is it just us today, Davina?
Listen, I feel like every week it's like I guess last week was three.
Yeah, I had lost power. It was a really bad storm, and my laptop
Mm.
died.
Oh man,
Yeah, it was tragic. But I watched
track the video.
the
Oh,
video. I need to watch it again, actually.
listen, I actually was watching other videos. Hey, Dr. Wilson,
Hey, but I really was
How
like,
are you all doing?
good.
I was sitting on the edge of my bed, and I was like, like
I
last week.
think the
Yeah,
weather's so dreary. Like it's just so. I really fall just hit us. Whenever the first day of fall was, it was like boom, I'm here. I'm taking away the sun. It's cold. I feel like I need a coat now. So
Yes,
that's
and
been really affecting my mental. Like I had access scalp, woke up from my nap. I had to set me an alarm.
mm,
I
yeah,
was
my
like,
kids at school
I
have.
want a nap.
oh, you want a nap? Oh, I had listen, I have to
Gosh,
have a nap.
yes. Oh my
Mm.
gosh, I want a nap.
No, I build those in. It makes me more pleasant for my second part of the
Everyone's
day.
around you. You're glad that you're napped. Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My friends, my mom knows, like, oh, it's 4:30. It's your nap time. Right, right.
Okay, what is our assignment for today?
We are supposed to be doing human development. Or
Okay. Did we start that last week? Did I go over some questions?
no, we 100% did career.
Okay.
I wish
Okay.
somebody
Okay.
this one. You said you watched the video. At the end, did we finish? I feel like we finished career. I know I've heard the
we
couple
never
different.
did human development.
Was it counseling and help? Which one did I have human development? Because remember we were supposed to do
That
um
is Kohlberg and Erickson and knowing the stages, those people.
Oh, no,
no, we were
I haven't heard
supposed to
Eric.
do it. Yeah, we were
Okay.
supposed to do it.
That's
Then we
right.
did
Okay.
diversity.
We
So
did
then
something else. Yep.
mm-hmm.
Okay. I
So
am going to see here. Good question. Anybody have any questions? You've gone over something, you've seen something, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before. You're doing a practice question, something came up.
Career was intense.
mm.
I rewatched the video. It was intense in a good way, I guess, because it brought
There's a
light to a lot of
lot
the
of
challenges
questions.
I was having on the test. Because
Okay.
there were a lot of questions on my test that I've taken about career, and it did the detail you went into about like Ann and Super and Holland and going in that order in which they came about and who was first and then who kind of copied off the other one. That helped me a lot because I think on my test I was getting Super and the other people confused thinking he did it first, but now I found out it was somebody else that did it, so it made sense. It made sense, but it was very filled with information that I needed to hear.
So that is a question that I had. Thank you for bringing that up, Erica. So it is important. I mean, beyond in my mind, kind of knowing, okay, Parsons was the father, it is important to know that Ginsburg was before Super and all of that for
It
test
is.
purposes.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It is. It
Okay,
is. It
awesome.
is. And also just to know that super, so sometimes you'll see some terms that belong to both. So you're not confused because Super had it first.
Super had it before.
I'm sorry, Ginsburg had it first.
Oh, okay. Lord have mercy.
I apologize. No. Ginsburg had it first.
He was the first developmental therapist, Ginsburg,
yes, he was.
Others.
Very good.
That was the thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was going to say, it looks like somebody studied this week. I'm impressed. Go ahead.
I was like, career was definitely the one I had been waiting on. And even though I missed this class because I had mommy duty and all that other stuff, but I went back and I've watched it twice since you all did it last week. So
what is your test date?
November 22nd from 8 to 12. Arlington, Virginia.
Are you a
No,
morning person?
Alexandria Testing Center.
Are you a morning person?
I am. I'm not an evening person, which is sometimes what you probably see me when I'm in.
No, I'm like, I don't
No,
know
I'm
that
a
I would
morning
take that
person.
test at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I'm normally up
yeah.
about 4:35 every morning anyways.
I would not have gotten any sleep and I'd be mad and
Oh,
I would,
yeah.
you know, I
Is
couldn't
there
do
a
it at
midday?
noon
Is there a
either.
midday option, Erica?
Not on that day. It was.
But have you seen midday options in
I
Maryland?
have seen midday option. I saw
That's
one
what I
the week prior. There was a 12 until 4 or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
But I was looking for a morning option, which is why I chose the 22nd. So that was the next morning option.
Got it. Yeah, I'm not mid. I would be up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep. Be a mess. And so one of the questions that I did have is how important it's. I tried to start. I had created like a column of trying to figure out which theorists were developmental theorists. I know we just have the one constructivist theorist. So is that important should we focus on trying to categorize the different career theorists?
Well, because you might get a question that asks you, you know, according to developmental theorists, and then helps you narrow it down.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So it'll help you narrow it down between the choices. I'm trying to stop sharing my screen. It won't let me do anything. Okay. What do you see on my screen? Tell me what you see.
Just you.
Actually, back in. Okay, I'll be right back.
So, if you do think that portion did really help kind of clear up any gray areas, okay, I did.
Like when
I
she
felt like
started listing them in order, that
Mhm.
helped me because now I have it kind of in my brain that this is what happened. He came and did this, but these were actually the first people that did it. Then she go on and she kind of goes all the way down till she starts talking about and the two female
Linda and
careers, and then it goes into the definition. But I was always confused about Super and Holland and Ginsburg and them. I'm sure I missed all of those because I was getting them confused.
Okay.
And like she said, when you get a question like who's the developmental theorist, it helps to narrow it down from like Carson and all of them.
Okay. So developmentally, I just had on my list. I don't know if I was going to come back and I forgot like Parson, Ginsburg, Super, Gottfredson,
Holland.
in Holland, because he had stages. Holland
was trading factor.
Right.
The real.
Do you have developmental stages? I remember, like I got Holland hexagon. I kind of got.
But those are not stages.
Developmental.
Those are trait and factor.
Right, but when he considered developmental, that's why I was getting.
No.
Okay. I didn't have him.
It's trait and factor.
Okay.
So trait and factor means if I know myself and I know about the job, those two things will match.
Gottfredson was gender-based theory.
So she's circumscription and compromise. So I'm going to make a compromise based on the way that I was raised, when I was circumscribed.
And then, Comber, they started going into career theorists, counseling or whatever. He did the career belief inventory.
He got it. He wanted you to challenge the belief system of your clients. What he said is it's based on our social learning, what we learned around us and what we saw. And most of us had, or not all most of us, but some of us had never seen anybody ever finish college, never seen anyone get a job and do well. So his goal was when clients came in is that we were going to challenge their belief system.
Mhm. Okay, he believed in the planned happenstance.
He did, which means
That something, if it's something better may come along and to kind of tap into that.
okay, but
Something
have
better
a
go
plan.
along unplanned. Right.
Yeah, but have a plan. Have a plan. You're not walking around the world all willy-nilly. You have a plan. And then if something better comes along, it's really okay. Go ahead and do what's coming along, but have a plan.
And then Tidman and O'Hara was the get the job, keep the job, the decision-making model.
Absolutely.
That had to do with the anticipation.
Worried about getting your job and worrying about keeping your job. Absolutely. And sometimes you might see that he was he thought like Erickson, because Erickson, that last stage was ego integrity, and the last stage of Tiedemann is ego integration, right? Your ego is fully integrated into this job. Okay, so let's just look at some questions. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, we're just going to go through some overall just kind of test questions, looking at what we know, what we don't know. Okay, so look at number 2. I'll start with you, Janetta.
Which one is number 2?
I'm sorry, number 3. I apologize.
Okay. What skill should a counselor use when the client's words and actions are contradictory? A, confrontation and challenging. B, immediacy. C, open-ended questions. And D, clarification. I'm going to eliminate B. And
you know what that term means?
Yes, but I don't know how to explain it.
Okay, so it means if a client is going through something right now in the moment, we're going to go ahead and just deal with it. Immediacy. Right. So if they bring up something, instead of like discussing it later, or I'm going to give an example of what they're doing, that's immediacy. Okay.
I'm also going to eliminate A, and I'm going to pick D as in dog.
Tell me why.
I feel that, when a client is not as clear.
Oh, you are putting words in the question. Did it say they're not clear?
Well, it says contradictory, so that, I mean, it's not adding up, so that's not clear.
Oh, so that's 2 different things. Contradictory means I said red and I meant blue.
Right, and that's not clear.
So you're going to call me on it, not to clarify.
I'm going to clarify that I understand what you're talking about.
No, you're going to confront me. Contradictory means I said something and I did the opposite. Or I promised you I'd be there and I didn't show up. It's black and white. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. They contradict. So clarification is when you don't understand. If my words and actions contradict, you know what? I don't understand why anybody would ever drink Diet Pepsi. Oh my gosh, that is the worst thing ever. And you see me drinking Diet Pepsi, my words and my actions don't match. Call me on it. Okay, we think many times that we shouldn't confront as counselors, but that's not true. So if I've come to you every week and I'm complaining about losing weight, and I walk in and you see some Kentucky Fried Chicken greased down my chin, right? Call on it. So contradictory means something's going on, but I don't need to clarify. Clarify is when I don't understand what you said.
So are these human growth and development terms?
These are under this counseling skills, counseling relations, knowing those listening terms.
Counseling skills and counseling relations. Okay.
So I'm really trying to go back over some things that we learned as we keep adding on, because we're getting close to our end, and I want to make sure that we've kind of covered everything. Okay. Number 4, Davida.
What advanced skill provides an alternative perspective and potential positive view of a negatively perceived client situation?
And in your own words, what the heck are they asking me?
I don't know. I've read this
Oh,
question.
right, okay. So I'm getting you ready for the real test, okay?
Right.
Come on.
So okay, so I'm thinking that this is changing our perspective from negative to positive.
That's it. That's it. That's
Okay.
it. Okay.
So I would rule out C, immediacy, and then D, therapeutic self-disclosure. I will rule out those two.
Okay. Now go
And
back
then
to the question.
Okay, and so we are providing an alternative perspective. I think those are the key words for a potential. Okay, so I would say B, reframing.
You are very good. Now,
Okay.
reframing belongs to which theory? Do you recall?
Oh, no.
Reframing is Minuchin. Relabeling is going to be strategic framing therapy, which is Haven.
Okay.
They all mean the exact same thing as interpreting, right? So interpreting means I'm going to put a positive spin on it.
Okay, so you that reframing. What was the other the second one you said?
Reframing, relabeling, because remember, strategic therapy is the words, right? Therapeutic double bind, it's the words we use. So I'm giving you a different word. I'm going to relabel the problem. That is strategic. Reframing, because structure is your house. I need to reframe the situation, but they still mean the same thing. They just belong to different people. Okay. But reframing is exactly what it means. And it still means interpreting. Okay. With a positive spin. Very good. Very good. Number 5.
Erica. At the beginning of a counseling session, a counselor states, "It's good to see you again. Last week, we talked about your relationship with your partner, practicing assertive communication and engaging in self-care by asking for what you need. What basic skill did the counselor demonstrate?" Where are my answer is up here. Okay, clarification, paraphrase, summarization, reflections of feelings. At the beginning.
If you know the answer, follow the rules, rule out.
So I'm going to rule out clarification.
Okay.
And I'm going to rule out reflection of feelings. And I'm going to go with C, summarization.
Absolutely, absolutely. Reflection always means feelings.
Yeah.
Okay, always, always, always. Okay. Number 9, let's go there.
Okay.
Oh, we dropped that already. Now, come on.
A counselor who is attuned to their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences in order to accurately and authentically be themselves in a relationship with clients is demonstrating what concept? A, genuineness, B, congruence, C, emphatic, attunement, empathetic. I don't see the pathetic in there. That's what threw me. I'm sorry.
So empathy is empathy.
Yeah.
Okay, so empathetic is the empathy with the IC. Empathic.
Okay, I think I put an extra syllable. I was looking at empathic. Okay, I knew
that's what I was
saying.
Empathic.
Okay, empathic.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. C, empathic attunement. D, unconditional positive regard. Counselors attuned to their own thoughts and feelings in order to act and authentically be in themselves relationships. Okay.
What theory is this?
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
I don't know. Erica, do you know? Dollar friend.
Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers, those are his words, right? If the counselor is good, right? I got my stuff. All I do is sit back and listen. The client is the expert.
Client is the expert. Okay. So I would rule out D, unconditional positive regard, and A, genuineness, because I don't think that's what counseling doing. I'm sorry, that would leave me with B and C.
Okay,
And
so let's go back to the question, okay?
uh-huh.
So then pretty much all of these terms belong to Carl Rogers.
Okay.
However, so what he said is what's coming out of my mouth should
Matches.
match my words, right? If my client is telling me something and I'm trying to build that relationship, then it should match, okay?
Right.
Which means congruence. However, Carl Rogers called it genuineness.
Oh, okay. So I was
That
going for
the word
congruence.
he used.
Okay.
Okay.
It's
So
a
I
matter
think
of knowing what theorists use what.
absolutely the verbiage of the theorist. Okay. So that's why I ask you in the question, who did this belong to? And it does mean congruence. But according to Carl Rogers, he called that genuine. So so the other question we talked about with her was if contradictory, if something's coming out of my mouth and my body doesn't match, it contradicts. It's then incongruent. Okay. But he said if the therapist is genuine and real, the client can figure it out all by themselves.
Right. So this is a case of where there are two right answers, but one is better. And
having to know the theorist.
Okay.
And nowhere do you see his name in that, and right? So that's its question mark. What? Okay. And that's the vagueness of the test. That's what we look for, because I've got to know that verbiage that well.
Right. Okay.
Okay. I know. Okay. Let's go to number 11.
What's empathic attunement then?
So remember, we only feel empathy. We don't feel sympathy. So to be able to understand why my client made that decision at that time. Okay. So we're able to have empathy. Your friends, the client's friends have sympathy. They feel sorry for them. That's not what we do. Okay. So empathetic attunement is I'm in tune with whatever behavior you did. Yes, you killed your mother. And I understand at that time, it made sense to you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Number 11. What'd you say? Okay.
Yes, please.
Which description best aligns with the therapeutic group factor of installation of hope? A, human beings derive meaning from transcending the self by reaching out to others. Relevant factors can be shared in groups either through didactic instruction as well as through advice or suggestions provided by group facilitators or members. Groups provide the opportunity for members to learn that others may share similar thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Clients benefit from the counselors as well as from the experiences of other members who may be at a different stage in their process of coping with challenges.
So what is installation of hope mean?
So I'm using the example you gave, or maybe the example I feel like it is for me, following the Facebook academic counseling group and seeing that others have either failed and passed, or and they're sharing their passing scores. So seeing others' experiences that may be similar to mine and they are being successful has instilled hope that I can do that too.
Got it. That is one of Yalom's curative factors of group. That's very good. Very good. Now let's rule out. What can it not be?
Okay, it cannot be C.
Okay.
And B.
Okay. So now between A and D.
I'm gonna go with D.
Very good. Very good. Very good. What is A?
I don't know if I can explain it. As I read it, it makes sense. Huh?
One of the curative factors that is altruism. I do something that's nothing in it for me because it's good for other people. That is altruism. Okay.
Doing it for nothing in return.
just because it's a good thing to do. So people in AA, right, that've been for AA for 40 years and they've been clean for 4 years, and they keep coming and they'll go and share their story because they're just giving back to others.
Dr. Penn, the questions that we're going over are the counseling and helping section, right? Which is
No,
the
they're
largest on the
everything.
test.
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
we're going
But
over
this,
everything. Oh, I'm
okay,
sorry.
this
Yes,
is on
yes,
group.
I apologize. Yes, these are counseling and helping, and that's the largest on the test. Yes.
Okay, because the altruism and all of that, I feel that's under counseling. I'm just trying to like, okay, to be that, I need to go.
You are correct. You are correct.
Okay.
So I'm going over kind of everything. That's what I'm going to do for the next couple of weeks, is go back and really, again, learn how we answer the questions based on the content and the knowledge that you have. But as we get to the human development questions, I'll go back and teach those as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, you're right. Helping relations, where the biggest numbers come from. Absolutely. Number 12, Janetta, you want this one?
I'm muted. I'm sorry. A group member is rambling on with long stories about themselves that distract from the purpose of the group. What is the most appropriate group leader action to take to address the group member? Speak one-to-one with the group member about their behaviors. Discuss the group member's behavior with the supervisor. Tell the group member to leave the group. Ask the group members to share their feelings. A group member is rambling on a long story about themselves to distract them. Okay. I'm going to take out C.
Okay.
I'm also going to take out B. I feel that I'm going to
stay in the question. So what's going on?
The group member is going on and on about themselves, and it's a distraction from the purpose of the group.
Okay. What I'd like to do is block him. I'd like to say, Bob, be quiet so somebody else can have a turn.
Right.
Is that one of my choices?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So then what do I do? Because the choice I'm looking for ain't there.
Right. I will say
Okay.
A is an apple.
Absolutely. 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 Okay. So normally I wouldn't take it outside the group. I would just say something to him in the group. But since that wasn't an option, I send it to talk to him, and I don't need supervision for that. I'm not going to tell him to leave the group, and I don't really care how the other group members feel at this point. Okay. I would hope as we got closer to those stages of cohesiveness, that one of the group members would say something. Right, would say, hey, Bob, you keep talking, but in the beginning stages, they're not going to say that because they are still not that comfortable. Good job. 14, Erica.
Which description best universality? Okay, best aligns with the therapeutic group factor of universality. I'm not in this alone. Others are dealing with it. Okay, human beings derive from transcending the self by reaching out. That's altruism. Relevant facts can be shared in groups through didactic instruction as well as through advice or suggestion provided by the group facilitators or members. Group provide the opportunity for members to learn that others may share similar thoughts, feelings, and experiences. D, clients benefit from the counselors as well as from the experiences of other group members who may be at a different stage in their process. I would get these questions all the time. It would be the same choices, but the word would be different. And so good you're doing this, because that would throw me off. Like, wait a minute, I answered this somewhere, but it was like 10 questions ago. Okay. So I know what universality is. So I'm ruling out D because I just used that one in the question previous.
And you can rule out A too, because
I'm gonna rule out A because I know that's altruism. And I'm gonna go with C, thoughts, feelings, and experiences.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you really might see a lot of those types of questions on the test, making sure you know exactly what those stages happen and do those things. Absolutely. Okay. Let's do 22, Davida.
A member of a counseling group has a realization that they bear ultimate responsibility for their own life. The group member is experiencing what group therapeutic factor? A, interpersonal learning, B, existential factors, C, universality, D, altruism. So one person in the group had a realization. So I'm going to rule out C and D, and then go with A, interpersonal learning.
Prove it to me. What words in the question do you see that they had a relationship with somebody else?
You know what? No, because I was thinking intrapersonal. But no.
So
intrapersonal.
Intras by myself, right? Intercourse takes two people.
That's a great way to remember
There's
that.
a different word when I have sex by myself.
Right.
That's not a test question.
Okay.
Okay.
I was thinking inter, like inside, but no. So inter.
INTRA. So
Yeah.
Freud said intra-psychic, right? All the things that were inside, hidden deep down inside.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So so ruling out A, so then B?
It is. So Yalom was an existentialist, right?
Mhm.
What is my purpose? What I want out of my life, right? He talked about we've got choices to make. So if I come to I got to stop blaming somebody else, right? Whatever my purpose is, it's up to me.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that is existential factors because Yalom was an existentialist.
Okay.
Okay. 23, Jeanette.
After completing their initial assessment of a client, the counselor recommends an assertiveness training group. Which of the following best describes this type of group? A, psychoeducational, B, interpersonal process or unstructured, C, cognitive behavioral or structured, or D, support group. A training group.
Stay in the question, right? It's here the counselor says you need an assertiveness training group. You need to learn to be assertive. Let's rule out.
I'm going to rule out A as well as D.
Okay.
And I'm going to pick C.
Okay. So I would have been stuck between A and C.
Mm-hmm.
C is my answer. You're absolutely right. Great job. I would have been stuck between A and C though. Like what's the difference between a psychoeducational group and a cognitive behavior? So in this one, that was the CBT was the best answer. Psychoeducational is me just teaching you anything.
Right.
Okay. But so I need to change the way that you are thinking and therefore change the way that you behave. That's where the CBT comes from in. Very good. Very good. That let me get stuck on that one. Okay. 26. Erica.
During the pre-group interview, what factors should the counselor evaluate in potential group members? Sounds so familiar to a question I had a while ago, like the dog group. Okay, support system and compositions of membership, cultural background and familiar circumstances, past substance use and hospitalization history, maturity and readiness. During a pre-group interview, so before the group, what factors should the council evaluate in potential group members? So, okay, I'm not going to ask anything that's not in the question. I'm going to rule out A and C.
Now between B and D.
And I'm going to go with B.
No, you're not. Is there anything in the question about culture?
No, it's not.
So then my answer can't be culture.
Okay,
if they
D.
wanted you to know it was a cultural group, it would be in the question.
Yeah, it didn't say what type of group it was.
It did not. It did
Oh.
not. So if they wanted me to, if they wanted that to be the answer, it would be in the question.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would need to know if they were ready and mature enough to be in
Absolutely.
such
For
a group. that
any group. It does, it's very, very vague, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was trying to watch you process. I was wondering, is she thinking a particular type of group in mind?
I was, and when that familiar circumstances was, I was like, okay, is this an open or a closed group? That's why, and I said it out loud. I said, I'm not going to put anything in the question. It's not asking me, and I still
got it. So if
trying
I'm vague, okay. If it said I'm going to do a heterogeneous group, right, and I want to make sure they bond quickly, then I really might look at their cultural background. But it didn't say that. Okay. Did I mention it's a reading test? Have I said that?
Yeah, you always do.
Okay. I just make it through.
That's literally what I was just sitting here thinking. Like that question was 1,000% just reading, not even.
Nope, just don't.
Yeah,
think
but
it.
I
Don't
took
think
it to another level,
don't
and I
say
said
it
out loud, I'm
best.
not going to put anything here that's not here, and I still
Yeah.
put it
Okay. It's a skill. It's the skill of learning not to do that. Okay.
Yep. Gotcha.
28, Davida.
Which of the following observations may assist a counselor in determining whether a client is not an appropriate person for group counseling? A, low motivation. B, interpersonal problems. C, troublesome attention-seeking behavior. D, inadequate social skills. So the question says the counselor is trying to determine who's not appropriate for group. Oh.
Which of the following observations? That means I have to be able to see it.
See it.
Okay.
So that see it. So low, I would rule out then A, low motivation.
Okay.
And then see it. B, interpersonal problems. I will rule that out as well.
Every time C and D. Okay. So we got these two, and I got to figure out between the two, which is the better answer. Go back to the question and figure out which is the better one.
The following observations may assist a counselor in determining whether a client is not appropriate person for group counseling. So I would go with C, troublesome.
Yes, you would. I can see someone who's misbehaving, right?
Yes.
And remember, D is one of the curative factors. If you have inadequate social skills, I can teach you that in group, right? Because that's one of the curative factors of group. Okay. Very good. Very good. Very good. Number 29, Janetta.
A group member's experience of interconnection and recognition of shared human experience is an example of what therapeutic group factor? A, interpersonal learning. B, installation of hope. C, universality. And D, existential factors of interconnection and recognition of shared human experience. Shared human experience. I feel like I've seen that somewhere.
So if I'm sharing something, that means with other group members, not by myself.
Right. I'm sorry, I can't really hear you.
I'm sorry, I said rule out.
Okay. I am going to take out B.
Okay.
And D.
Okay. Now you're between A and C, and I'm going back to the question.
Interconnection and recognition of shared human experience. A.
Very good. Interconnection, right? I'm bonding with these other people. Absolutely. Universality is the thought that we all belong, right? It feels it's good that I'm not the only one in this group. Okay. 30. Go ahead.
I was going to eliminate that first, but it still worked out.
It did. It did. It did. It did. It did. Okay, Erica.
30, which of the following indicates what process evaluations measure in group work?
What is that question asking me?
What process evaluations are
So an
measured in-
evaluation is what does that mean about if I'm evaluating?
Looking at behaviors, looking at activity amongst group members, engagement.
So it's asking me which of the following would indicate that I'm using some sort of scale to measure process. Okay, because in
Okay.
groups we have content, we have process, we have the product, which is at the end.
At
So that's
the,
what it's asking me for. I'm trying to measure group process.
okay.
So how would I measure that?
Group dynamics, group effectiveness, group outcomes, and level of group conflict and resistance. So I'm gonna, rule out, valuation.
That means you're lost in the question. That means you're lost in the question. Okay, so go back to the question.
Process evaluation to measure.
So how do I know? And the group process are the stages, right? Norming, forming, storming, performing, and it's over. Or whether it's conflict, orientation, transition, working. So that's the process. The goal is to get from being very leader-led, they're talking to me, to being very group-led, where I just get to sit back and say, hey, Bob, what do you think about what Mary said?
Okay. I think I'm still lost, but that was a lot.
So tell me what I said. Let's make sure we understand it.
So you explained the group process, forming, norming, storming, performing, adjourning.
Got it.
Going
Going through the stages.
Going through the stages.
And the goal of the process is go from very much leader-led to now very much group-led. When they get to cohesiveness, I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting back like, hey. So that's the goal. The healing happens in the tightness of the group.
Okay.
Okay. So if I'm trying to measure the process, is it getting what I want to happen for them to be close and share? What would I use? What would I be looking for? I'm going to rule out D. Okay, the level of group conflict and resistance. I'm going to take that out because that definitely lets me know that they're nowhere near tightness.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna rule out C.
Do you know why?
I think outcome would come after the fact, not during the process.
Okay, so the outcome is usually a product group, right? When I walk away with my sheet of paper that says I completed anger management.
Okay.
Okay, so in those groups, it's not very tight. We don't always bond. We can have the teacher up there who, makes us watch videos and blah, blah, blah. So we're not usually bonding in those type of groups.
Yeah, we're just trying to get something.
Exactly, a product at the end.
Okay, so effectiveness and dynamics. So I'm
That
gonna
is
go
just-
with A.
Yes, you are.
Ooh.
That's just knowing the word. The group dynamics is a process that happens in group. Whether it's Yalom or Tuckman or any of those pieces, that's the process.
Yep.
I go from that first stage where I'm telling you nothing, and and 12 weeks later, you're like my best friend. I'm bearing my soul to you. Okay, so that is the dynamics or the process. And the outcome, the outcome of a process group is like to be a better person, and there's no big outcome. The outcome of a product group is to get my kids back, get my license back. Okay. That's a pretty typical test question. So understanding that terminology. Okay. 31, Davida.
A pre-adolescent client is exploring their internal sense of gender and how this informs their sense of self. What term describes the aspects of self is this client exploring? A, gender identity. B, gender expression. C, gender socialization. And D, or gender orientation. So I'm thinking the key words in this question would be internal sense and self. So I would rule out B and C, because those deal with the outside, and then I would go with A, identity.
Very good, very good. So gender dysphoria is I'm unhappy with the gender I was assigned at birth, right? So I may have girl parts, but I identify as a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Let's see here. Let's go with number 45.
I can't see all of it. Maybe it's a pop.
The top is at the others are at the top.
Oh, I had it blocked by the us.
Okay. Make
Oh.
us very small, squeeze us together.
My bad. Okay, 45. A 2-year-old client observes her mother roll her eyes and scoff.
Scoff like.
Scoff. Okay. At disliked items. The client began picking up items and showing them to her aunt. The client will yell out, "That's gross." Which of the following theory is associated with the behavior of the client? A 2-year-old client observes her mother roll her eyes and scoff at disliked items. The client began picking up items and showing them to her aunt. The client will yell out, "That's gross." Okay. Which of the following theory is associated with the behavior of the client? Pavlov, Skinner, Watson, Bandura. Okay. So I know Skinner is the schedules of reinforcement and all that stuff.
Not necessarily. All he did was operant conditioning, which is rewards and consequences, right? If I like the behavior, I'm going to consequence it by adding or taking away something. So the schedule reinforcement doesn't really belong to anybody. Okay. Pavlov is the dog.
The dog.
Pairing two things.
Okay.
Right. Tell me what is happening in the question. In your own words, what's happening?
So the client is 2.
Got it.
She is repeating things that she sees her mother do.
Oh, look at that. So what behavior theorist is that?
A.
Because?
Say it again.
I said because.
Is that like because you added something to take something away?
Okay, so what did she add? So your answer doesn't match what you just told me. So Pavlov is pairing two things, right? I hear the doorbell ring, I go answer the door because I paired those two things.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't pair, she mimicked. She saw her mother do it and then she did it. So that is social learning theory. Who does that belong to?
Bandura, correct?
There we go. She learned by watching her mother. That is Bandura. He did self-efficacy when we talk about him in careers, but he did the Bobo doll, right? He said, that's how we learn, just by watching others. Okay. So you told me the right answer. You just didn't put the right name with the theorist. Okay, Bandura. That's how we learned how to ride an elevator. Okay. 46, Davida. Did I go in the right order or is Erica's turn? I'm sorry. Erica.
I'm back. During a session, a school counselor analyzed. During a session, a school counselor notices their client was able to comprehend the magnitude of their actions and appreciate all of the consequences the client experienced as a result. The client's level of understanding typically takes place once the brain is fully developed. How old is the client based on the understanding that the client's brain has reached full development? Sometimes I feel like my brain has not reached full development.
Sorry.
None of these ages.
I didn't see our name in that question.
Okay. So I'm gonna rule out A.
Okay.
And I'm gonna rule out so they in school, okay?
So I'm gonna say this is a tricky question. So this would not be a test question because
Okay.
that's not true. So this would be a not valid question.
Thank you for that, because I'm like school
Okay,
counselor.
because I was about to be like school counselor, so
Exactly. Okay, it's a real special school. Okay,
so they is so whoever it is still in school. So let me see how I can. So I'm gonna go with D.
Yeah, you're going to go with C. The answer is C.
Oh.
So this this question would not be valid. Okay,
Yeah,
because it says a school counselor, and I guess it could be a college counselor, but I just think that that's not a fair question. Okay, because you really don't grow, you don't fully develop until you're 26, 25, 26. Okay, that's the flat answer. So I think this would be considered an unfair question on the test. Not valid.
Maybe it's one of them part of those 40, those extra 40.
Well, this is just, whenever you buy a practice test, they're not as valid always as the real test. So I'll tell you if I think that's not the right answer. Let's go with 48.
Okay. Which of the following options best illustrates the concept of epigenetic theorists emphasize the most regarding nature versus nurture? Which of the following options best illustrates the concepts of epigenetic theorists emphasize the most regarding nature versus nurture? A, nature, B, nurture, C, the combination of nature and nurture, D, nature over nurture. So I think the key would be to know what an epigenetic theorist is.
Okay. So if they were a total geneticist, they would think it was just born with it.
You're born with it.
Epigenetic means they believe it's a combination of both.
Okay. So I could rule out A and B since those are just singular, and then the answer would be C.
Absolutely. So genetic means I was born with it, right? So epigenetic is a term that just means maybe. Not real sure where it came from.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go to Proposed research. We'll come back to that. Let's go to 64.
After 3 months of working with the counselor, a teenage client reveals that they are questioning their gender identity. The counselor has no training or experience in working with clients questioning their gender identity. What ethical standard will be most important for the counselor to apply in this case, considering the established relationship they have with the client? Counselor self-awareness of values and beliefs to avoid imposing values on clients, awareness of boundaries and competence, monitoring counselor effectiveness, seeking continuing education to maintain and further develop competence. What ethical standard will be most important for the counselor to apply in this case, considering the established relationship they have with the client? Okay, I am going to take out C, as well as awareness of competence. Benefit values and beliefs to avoid imposing values on.
The question, and this is a code of ethics question. So which one of my code of ethics is getting in the way or would get in the way?
A.
Okay, so the question says, what ethical standard would be the most important for the counselor to apply to this case, considering the established relationship? Okay, so they already have a relationship. It's 3 months, and now he's come out and told me that he's not sure of his gender identity. Okay, so my stuff can't get in the way, right? But I've seen him for 3 months, and if he just suddenly comes out and says, oh, by the way, I'm not sure, and I leave him, whoa, he's really going to have a hard time, right? I can't abandon him. Okay, so then what should I do is the question.
D.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, absolutely, absolutely. Very good. 65, Erica?
A client practices Wicca. Okay.
Devil worship. I'm sorry,
Okay.
witches. Pentagon,
Witchcraft.
yes.
Witchcraft, okay.
If I offended anybody, I'm sorry. I missed that day in school. A Wiccan is the witch, yeah, witchcraft.
Okay. A client practices with Wicca and wants help processing through an opportunity they have to participate in ritual. The counselor identifies as Christian. Oh, sounds like me. What ethical? I know it's not me in the question.
Not even this time.
What ethical principle is most important for the counselor to consider? A, imposing values. B, developing a non-professional relationship. C, protecting confidentiality. And D, abiding by legal standards. So I'm going to rule out C. And I'm going to rule out D, and I'm going to go with A.
Yeah, absolutely. My values have no place whatsoever in the therapeutic relationship. Very good. 66.
An 18-year-old college freshman tells their college counselor, I always did what was expected of me, but now that I'm starting over where nobody knows me, I just want to be myself. I feel like I was born in the wrong body. I don't feel like a guy. I've always felt like I'm really a woman trapped in a man's body. Which of the following best describes the client's gender identity? A, cisgender, B, non-binary, C, transgender, or D, genderqueer. So I'm going to rule out A, cisgender, and D, genderqueer, and go
B or C?
I'm going to go with like a C.
Okay, what is B?
Did you don't identify as either, I thought?
Got it, that's it. So, he, she, or they, okay? So he feels like so anywhere in the transition of changing is transgender.
Okay.
Whether I've had a sex change, whether I've had some surgery, whether I just am or describing myself as a boy, that's anywhere on the spectrum. Okay.
What is gender queer? I'm sorry.
I was just what is gender queer?
It's the same thing as non-binary.
Okay. That's okay.
So I'm not sure my gender is queer. That's like the same as I'm not male or female. Okay. So gender is who you what you have between your legs. Sexual orientation is who you sleep with. Okay. 67.
A counselor is working with a client who identifies as transgender. The counselor needs to understand that the client identifies as which of the following? The client identifies with a gender different from the sex assigned to them at birth. The client identifies as the same gender as the sex they were assigned at birth. The client identifies as genderqueer. The client identifies as cisgender. A.
Got it. Okay, let's go with a couple more diversity ones. Okay, so 68.
I do have, I think that's for me, but I have a question. Do you, I recall you going through the different sexuality, gender, transgender, bi. What was that? It wasn't careers. What was the
social diversity?
That's okay. Because I remember writing all those down. Right. Okay.
But there are questions under career that also talks about someone who is, so, you know, if I'm a career advisor and I know that someone is transgender, and, you know, I'm not going to go let him apply. I'm not going to suggest he applies. It would be a Christian school in the corner. Right. So that's just some common sense to protect our clients.
Okay. So I'm going 68. A counselor is conducting an intake assessment using a structured interview with a Hispanic client for which English is their second language. What consideration will the counselor take with the client with respect to completing the structured interview? The counselor will utilize the assistance of an interpreter to conduct the interview. The counselor will adjust the manner in which they conduct the interview because of the ethnicity of the client. The counselor will conduct the interview in the same manner as they would with all clients. And the counselor will skip the assessment process and begin treatment plan with the client. Definitely ruling that one out, D. Okay. And I'm gonna rule out C.
Let's go back to the question. When you're hesitating, that means you're lost.
Okay, so there's a counselor. She's conducting an intake using structured interview with a Hispanic client whose second language is English. What consideration will the counselor take with the client with respect to completing the structured interview?
Does it say anything that the client doesn't understand English?
No.
Okay, so you're just bilingual. It doesn't say they don't. So don't add anything to that.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna rule out D and I'm gonna rule out A.
Okay. Now you're between B and C.
And I'm gonna go with C.
There we go. There we go. You were thinking. Maybe he don't speak English, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't say, okay. If it said he struggles with English, it would tell me that he's just bilingual. Turn off that cat, Erica. No thinking. Leave it at the door.
Answer these questions.
Okay. The cap is for every day in the real world, but not the test.
Not the test.
Okay.
I'm gonna get it.
Look at 75.
Which term would best describe, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Which term would best describe the aspect most important for a counselor to consider when counseling a Latinx Catholic bisexual genderqueer woman who is a first-generation college student?
Oh, no. Stay in that question. There's so
Ooh, that's a lot. Okay.
much.
So what is
Confused.
most important? So my client is a Latinx, then okay, so then they're Catholic, which is their religion, they're bisexual, genderqueer. So that's their sexual orientation as well as how they identify.
Got it.
And I don't think first generation college student applies to the question.
It would matter though, right? Because that's also a different category of marginalized people. If you're a first generation college student, really you have a much harder time in college than people whose parents have gone.
Yeah,
So
I was looking at the options and the answers. Okay. Oh, okay. So A, intersectionality, B, cisgenderism, C, transphobia / anti-trans prejudice, and then D, sexism. So I am going to rule out B, and I don't see that they're trans, so I'm going to rule out C. And then I would go with intersectionality because of how all of these meet.
That's exactly it. All of those different things meet together and come together. That's a pretty new term. That term is probably maybe 6 or 7 years old that we've introduced it in textbooks.
Okay.
So unless you've got a middle school kid, it's just a new term. It wasn't something that you taught in school. Okay, let's look at 101.
Mm-mm.
We're not doing super.
Oh,
You might want to volunteer for super.
I'm struggling with the recording. I'll get a different one.
Okay, let me go back and pick up some more of the human development anyway.
So are we gonna go over him? You're just gonna pull human development?
I will pull questions and go over it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
The career had me with a headache, y'all.
Career's got a lot of points.
Tylenol here.
Oh
And
my
then my
goodness.
power went out.
We ain't there yet.
Yeah.
Let's go. Where do I want to go? Let's go here.
You know, you say your power went out again?
No, my power went out when we were covering careers.
Okay.
Like, watching the recordings, I'm like, oh wow, it would go out the day I need it.
Yeah.
That was someone saying, just don't worry about careers, you'll be fine. Lying, you're so
No, not at all.
Okay, we did do our behaviors, right? We did positive and negative reinforcement. Okay, making sure we did.
A while ago.
Okay, that's under that first chapter. Okay,
that was the first chapter we did.
So let's start off with then Freud. What did Freud do?
Freud focus on the sex stuff.
Okay. So he's the only one. That's it. He's the only one that focused on the sex stuff. Nobody else did. Okay.
He focused on the ego and the super ego.
Which means
it is like the devil.
Okay.
That's the pleasure principle.
That's it.
The ego is the angel. It's like the reality. Like I should think things through.
Nope. The angel is perfection. The angel is, Pam, you shouldn't even have those thoughts, girl.
Ego is your reality.
Always be perfect. Okay. So devil, I want it now. Angel, never, ever. Pam, don't even think about it. Now, who is my middle person?
The middle person is the one that kind of keeps both balanced.
Got it.
It
So
focuses
that's
on
my,
the reality.
that's my ego.
Right.
Okay. So remember, all of my defense mechanisms are protecting my ego from things that I am just not ready to handle. Okay. So anyway, knowing that that's Freud, he's our first guy, right? He's the one that really looked at the first time that we ever talked to people about anything regarding what was going on. His case study was Anna O. That was not his client, it was his friend's client. And he went back and he looked at her to figure out, like, where'd she come from? Like, what was her biggest problem? So a case study is looking at one person, one event, one group. Okay, so that's one of our research types, is a case study. Let me do here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So looking at number, let's start. Yeah. Okay. Can you say 61? The one line at the bottom. Oh, am I not sharing?
Mhm.
Okay,
No,
so
you,
one line
yeah,
at the
I can
bottom.
see the one line at the bottom. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So infant has reached object permanence. What action would infer the child has reached this stage? Before I look at any of the answers, what theorist is this?
This is
Piaget. Okay.
oh,
Sensory motor is Piaget's first stage. So what he talked about is our child's schema, how we develop, how we see the world. So the acronym, some people can fly. Okay, that's how we remember what's happening during those stages. So that first stage is the first year of life. Okay. So what we know is that first year, birth to two, sensory motor, they are learning to see the world as they motor around. They're learning to crawl and walk, right? Scoot, crawl, and walk. That's how they're learning. They also learn with their all five senses. So that means they're putting stuff in their mouth, they're touching stuff, they're doing all those things, because that's how they're seeing the world. In my videos, there was when my son was little, we were in the mall, and he had a cigarette butt in his mouth. Like, because that's my first child, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna die. My third child, I'm like, whatever. Okay. So that is how their five senses learning the world. What is the goal of that stage? What task develops?
attachment, bonding.
The peekaboo question. Object permanence. They learn that you are still there at 6 months. Prior to that, they really think, oh my gosh, I closed my eyes and mom left the face of the earth. She's just gone. So object permanence is the goal of that first stage. So that happens at 6 months. What we know then, usually between 6 and 12 months, is when stranger anxiety develops. But it's not until 6 months that I get that I'm a separate person. And now that I learn I'm a separate person, now I'm afraid to go to the doctor or to granny or any of those things. Okay. Prior to 6 months, you can hand that baby to anybody. They care less. It's like it just hasn't developed yet.
What did you call it? Stranger anxiety?
They're afraid to go to the doctor. They're afraid to go to strangers. If they don't see granny every week and granny comes and picks them up, they're afraid. Now, it usually happens between 6 and 10 months, 6 and 12 months. I've seen different answers on the test, but if I have the choice, I'm going to say before a year, but after 6 months. Okay. So the second stage of the P is the pre-operational. That's for ages 2 to 7. Okay. So those are those lovely, lovely twos. They're so great at that age, aren't they? What is the goal of that stage? What are they supposed to learn?
Language.
That is what they're going to learn. Absolutely. So up to 2, they really don't have, but by the time they're 3, they should have at least 250 single words. And the words they learn at first are the ones of things that are moving. Cat, dog, mom, dad, things that move are words that they learn first. Okay. But the goal of this stage is you're supposed to develop egocentrism. I am the center of the earth. The sun came up today because of me. My mom and dad put the sun there because of me. The sun follows me from room to room. Okay. They don't get there's anybody else in the world at all. So when 2 2-year-olds are playing side by side, that is not autism. The 2-year-old doesn't even see him, right? As long as there's a good daycare has tons and tons of toys, they're not fight, right? You. Also though, what that also means that during that stage also that if something happens, I think it's my fault. 5, mom and dad get a divorce, it's my fault. Okay, because the whole world is about me. Right, so my ego is the center of the universe. So if you think about ethnocentrism, my ethnicity is the center of the universe. There's another term that he uses, centration. Centration means that when I am, the story I talked about is when my son was little. He's 31 now, so this is like a long time ago. When he was little, we took him to the zoo, and all he focused on was this little bitty grasshopper on the fence that was right at eye level. There's the giraffe and the elephants and all of those things, but all he's centered on is this one thing. So at that age, kids also it's centration. That one little thing, that's all I can focus on. Okay. So it's very normal for 2 and 3-year-olds to go into a store, pick up a ball, and when they leave, it's mine. It's mine. What do you mean it's not mine? When you're 27, of course, that is called narcissism, okay? But 2 to 7 is perfectly normal, okay? So that is for the preoperational stage. Something else that happens in the preoperational stage, I'll go down and just kind of read to you. It's in the textbook also. Okay, so I began to think in symbols and learn to use words and pictures to represent objects, okay? So then, some people's kids learned very early the big M in the sky. They couldn't read yet, but whenever you passed that big M in the sky, they got excited, right? Because they paired that M in the sky with mama taking them for Happy Meals. So they're symbolizing, they know what that M means, but they still can't read the words. Okay. They're getting better with language and thinking, but still very vague. They also, at this stage, this is when we're beginning to see that schema develop, the schematic. That term belongs to Piaget. You might see it also under Beck, because Beck's our CBT guy, but your schematic is the way that you see the world. So the goal of the way that our brain grows, according to him, between those ages is between assimilation and accommodation. Right? So assimilation is as similar. So a little boy, the question I think in the, it used to be in the 750 book, the little boy sees a fat woman in the store and he says to his mom, hey, that's a whale, because in his little mind, they look very similar, as similar. Okay. And then mom says, no, that's not a woman is a person and a whale is an animal. So now that's accommodation. He has to make room in his schema for the new information. Okay. So let's make sure we understand that. Okay. So assimilation, new information is added to my existing knowledge. Right. Accommodation is now that new information replaces the existing knowledge. So I have to make room in my schema for new information. Right. So in assimilation, again, looks as similar. And that's the same term that we see in cultural diversity, right? So the second culture assimilates to look like every other American. So as similar, so it's the same thing. So be careful, you'll see if it's a culture question or a Piaget question. So then the goal is with assimilation and accommodation, then eventually I'm going to be able to get to an equilibrium. An equilibrium is what happens as I continue to learn new things. Eventually, everything kind of balances out. And then I continue my growing process. But as a little kid, I assimilate, mom corrects me. I assimilate, mom corrects me. I assimilate, mom corrects me, right? Accommodation, and then I get this process of learning. And the word he used was your schema, S-C-H-E-M-A, schema. Right? So the next stage is that concrete stage. In the concrete stage, what happens there?
Logical operations. You can tell the
So-
difference between small to large.
Okay. So yes, you're right. So what is that called when I learn the glasses have the same amount?
Conservation.
Got it. What don't I have at that stage?
What don't you have?
Uh-huh.
Abstract thinking.
Bingo. I'm very concrete. Okay. When my mother told me she's going to go see a man about a dog and I'm 7, I'm like, Mom, where's that dog? When I'm 12, I know that means none of your business. Right. But when you're a little kid, whatever she said, you believe. Okay. So if you tell a little kid it's raining cats and dogs, they're going to go outside and like,
Cats and dogs.
exactly, Mom, but you said. So abstract thinking is 12 and over. Now, Piaget did say some people don't get to abstract thinking, the formal stage. He also said some people can get to the formal stage and something can happen and they go back, especially a TBI, or traumatic brain injury, some kind of neurocognitive event can happen. And then, I've had a stroke and you ask me a simple question and I can't tell you what it means. I can't translate the parable because I've gone backwards. Okay. So very, very literal. Okay. If you say, I'll be back in 5 minutes and they've got a little clock, Mom, you said 5 minutes. You said 5 minutes, Mama. Okay. So all of those those proverbs, what is it? A bird in the hand or 2 in the bush. And the last stage is formal. Go ahead.
I never heard that before.
I just made it up. I know it's really true. I swear. That's literally what it means. When my kid was little, I used to tell my kids that I was going crazy. Like, where are you going? Where are you going? I'm going crazy. Like, no, you are crazy. so, but literally, that's what kids mean. Do you not remember your mother telling? There was always in my house. There's also always an adult term that meant none of your business. Do you remember growing up in your house what a term that meant?
Stay in a child's place.
Okay. So there was always a term that you don't be in grown folks' business, and it didn't always literally translate to what they said, but I knew it meant go away. So but between 7 and 11, I'm very concrete. So between 7 and 11, that conservation also. Before that, I don't know that those glasses have the same amount. Before that, I think that the taller one has more. Okay. So in my videos, I'll say when my kids were little, I cut that pizza into like 24 slices, like a little bitty slither. That they were 2 and 3 and 4, and hey, I ate 4 pieces of pizza. It wasn't even 1. But by the time they're 7 or 11, like, Mom, this ain't a slice of pizza. Okay. So that is Piaget. Piaget also has a theory of morality. In that 750 book, I've seen that one question. We don't teach that anymore. He does have a theory, but what happened is Kohlberg came along, and Kohlberg and Piaget were friends, and Kohlberg then took over, known as our morality guy. Right? So Kohlberg said that not you guys, only the men, were born immoral. Okay, which goes against most religions of the world. Most religions believe you come into this world this innocent thing, but Kohlberg said, no, y'all bad at birth. He said we had to learn morality. So in those first 2 stages, so there's 6 levels and 3 stages. Okay, so the 3 levels are pre-conventional, conventional, and then post. So you see that pre-conventional is the same thing as like the pre-operational that Piaget had. Okay, so don't get those confused because they really were buddies. So the goal of Piaget was for you to be fully operational. That's the formal stage. And the goal of Kohlberg was for you to be to live a life based on your own morals, not necessarily the law. Okay, so in those first stages, and I've never on the test seen them divided between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4. I've usually seen them together, but 1 and 2 is pre, 3 and 4 is conventional, and 5 and 6 are post. Okay. The bottom line, though, is between those first 2 stages, I'm sorry, the first 2 levels, little kids just don't want to get in trouble. I will follow the rules, so I will stay out of trouble. Okay. I will stay in line at school and keep my hands to myself, because at the end of the day, I'll be on the green car. It's good for me to do the right thing. I haven't learned any morality yet. I've just learned it's good for me to not get in trouble. Okay, so it's about them and avoiding punishment. So then the second one, conventional, that is where he said most of us stay, between 8 and 13. So the conventional stage is we're going to follow the rules just because they're the rules. Okay, so I'm going to stop at the stop sign because that's what I'm supposed to do. There's no internal morality like, oh my gosh, let me stop so I don't kill somebody. That's not there. We're just doing it because we don't want the ticket, we don't want the fine, we don't want to get in trouble. So we're going to follow the rules without question because they're just the rules. Right? So between age of, again, that's 18 and 13. So good boy attitude, right? I want everybody to see Pam as a good person. And the second one is because those are the rules. We're not going to steal, and there's no internal belief because it was wrong. It has more to do with the fact that I don't want to get in trouble, and I don't want to see anyone ever see me as a bad person. And then, of course, the last stage is the post-conventional. Did many people get there, according to Kohlberg? Very few, very few, very few. So what he said was that these are people that are going to follow the rules because it matches their own social beliefs. So I always talk about the civil rights movement, of course, right? When, you know, Rosa Parks wasn't going to give up her seat, right? She knew there'd be consequences, right? All of the freedom riders, everyone that sat at the bus counter knew there'd be consequences. But their morality or their decision was based on what they felt was right and wrong, not the law. Okay, so we can go back to COVID and people that in the beginning of COVID refused to get the shots, refused to wear the mask. Okay, and there were consequences, right? You lost your job, you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't travel, but it didn't matter because my belief system said I'm not getting the COVID shot. So that's that stage. Very few people get there. Most of us are going to stay at the level of just doing what I'm supposed to do. Okay, a couple people get there. You're kind of older friend with Jack Kevorkian. Jack Kevorkian was the he came up with the euthanasia machine, or people can kill themselves. Okay, he spent 20 years in prison because he felt like people who were terminally ill had the right to kill themselves. And the American government said no, and they put him in prison, and he died. Now, in many states, you can, right? In many states, it's okay, right? We can talk about gay marriage and the woman who didn't want to sign the marriage certificate when Obama first signed the bill into law, and she refused. She knew there were consequences, but she was driven by her own morality. Right? Now, who was the woman that disagreed with Kohlberg? That'd be good old Carol Gilligan. So Carol Gilligan worked with Kohlberg, and Carol Gilligan just kept saying, that's not true. Women are not born that way. Women are born to be more moral. We're born innate caregivers, that we didn't have to learn morality the same way that men did. And what happened is we just really kept failing that morality scale. And that's when she came up with, no, that's just not true.
Carol Gilligan or Tarvey?
Gilligan? No, that's Gilligan. You don't need to know Tarvey.
Oh, so in a different voice is Carol Gilligan.
That's not her. Is that her book?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was
Carol
somebody else.
Gilligan in a different voice in other writings.
Yes.
So Carol is with a K or a C?
A C. I'll pull it up and show you the book.
Okay, thank you. Disagree, but
Is that a book that you read?
It's in the Hellwig book. And the
okay.
book, the name of the book
Page
she read is in the Hellwig book.
36. What number, Erica?
22.
Okay.
22 behind human development. She's C.
Thank you.
So Carol Gilligan. B, you don't need to know Carol Tavris, not at all. You might see Harriet Lerner. The intimacy of the dance of intimacy is working with, and again, all of these people, remember, came out in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. Women burned their bra in the 50s. Look at us, right? No, birth control was invented in the 50s. That's when things changed. So when women had reproductive freedom, then women went to work and had power and say so, things like that. So then all of these people are late 60s, early 70s when it comes to women. The only woman that's old is going to be Margaret Mather, object of permanence, object constancy. She's the one that was around Freud's time. Right? So Harriet Lerner, you'll see her, and her book is it's actually a pretty good book. Written since this is when it was written so long ago. It just really talks about how women now they've gone to work and how to figure out how to what is it? I can make the bacon fried up in the bed and never forget you're the man because I'm a woman. Hear that song? It's a commercial. So really the balance of being the wife, the mother, the worker, the parent, and still having this relationship with your husband. And at the time, that was very controversial because women were just supposed to, take care of their husband. So Harriet Lerner, she's someone that you might see. Gail Sheehy, I don't usually teach her. Okay. So it's really only making sure that Carol Gilligan and Harriet Lerner, those are the ones that I've always known to be on the test. Okay. So let's go back. Okay. So again, as we talk about just how we learn, okay, so it's divided into those areas: physical development, cognitive, and psychosocial, or sometimes it was called social. You had that big human behavior book, HBSE, the human behavior and social environment that you had to learn, and it divided all of the age categories into each of the categories. So it was like what babies do physically, what babies do cognitively, what babies do socially, and then it went through all of the age stages. So that's what we're looking at under human growth and development. It is not only the theorists, but also understanding normal human behavior. Okay, so if you are very sexual in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you'll be very sexual in your 70s, 80s, 90s. Human behavior doesn't change. Personality doesn't change unless there's some kind of traumatic brain injury or TBI or stroke or something. But if you were mean and nasty when you're 20, you're going to be mean and nasty when you're 90. Okay, so that's simple. That unless something happens, we don't change. Okay, so qualitative versus quantitative. As we grow, that's the same as research. Quantitative are my numbers. 5, 6, 7, 8. This is where I should be. Qualitative are just how we develop and change, and doesn't always match up with the same numbers. all this didn't start up here at the same age, right? Some people start at 9, some people start at like 12. So that's going to be a qualitative growth, not quantitative. Okay. If a baby doesn't walk by the time they're 18 months, we're concerned about that. That's quantitative, because babies should be walking physically as they're developing. By 18 months, they should be walking. Okay. So whenever I see numbers, like any other research we'll talk about, quantity are the numbers. Continuous or discontinuous. Again, so some things are continuous. The changes are sequential and cannot be separated easily. Some of them are discontinuous. Okay, so a baby being potty trained is usually a continuous. We go through this one time of potty training the baby. That's a continuous kind of thing, right? Once they're potty trained, they're potty trained. Of course, you know, things can happen. We have accidents, but we went through that. Discontinuous means that part of it happens here, part of it happens later, part of it happens here. Okay, so language development. So I can start off, I'm knowing, you know, 350 words, but by the time I'm, you know, 10 or 11, then my vocabulary has changed and grown, etc. So it's an always going kind of thing. Okay. Mechanistic, that means instinctive, that I was born with that. You'll see the, it's called the Babinski reflex. When you touch babies, rooting reflex. We touch babies on their cheek and they would turn toward the nipple, right? So that's innate. You're born with that. That keeps society alive. If you touch me on my cheek now, I ain't turning, right? So that's what it means. The instincts we were born with, and we outgrow those, most of them. Okay, and then organismic. That just talks about then as I grow as a person. Okay, so moral, ethical development. Right, so that is not something I'm necessarily born with. It is as my body changes and grows based on the society I live in. So me as a person, that's how I develop.
So Dr. Kemp, we need to know these terms, the definitions of these terms, or how they're applied, or
probably see. You're doing Pocket Prep, the behavioral health app.
I have, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
You might have seen 2 or 3 of them.
Okay.
Okay, so okay. Nature versus nurture, of course, we know that's still always a debate. So we know that the color of my skin is genetic, right? That's definitely something that I was born with. That's nature. Nurture, then my personality, did that come from the way I was born or who raised me? So that's always a debate over certain things. But genetics is genetics. Right? My DNA tells you who my mom and daddy are, and that tells you, like, you know, everything about my DNA. So my genotype are my genes. That's my DNA. Okay. So if you find my dead body on the streets and CSI comes in and there's no skin left, they'll still do DNA on my bones, and they'll still know that I was they'll know that I was Black to begin with. They'll know that for sure, because that's my race based on my DNA. Other things will probably tell them my culture. So if they do, like, you know, the contents of your stomach and things like that, they would know that you're born in America or things like that, right? But genetically, if there's nothing left but skins and bones, you know that I was a Black woman. And the phenotype is what you see of my genotype. Okay, so the face of my genes is the phenotype. John Locke, you learn that probably in like high school psychology. He said, children are born a blank slate. We can write anything on them that we want to. Plasticity, and especially neuroplasticity, that talks about the importance of our brain changing and growing. Right? Back in the day, we all thought that, you know, this is your brain on drugs. You'll never, ever, if you lose these brain cells, you'll never get them again. And that's true, they don't regenerate, but other parts of the brain then grow and change to make up for that. Okay. Our neurotransmitters, the ones you'll probably see are serotonin, that's your SSRI. Okay, so if you're not getting enough, what happens in your brain is neurotransmitters are only brain cells. and they fire, right? There's the synapses, they fire back and forth. And what happens is, for some reason, the next neurotransmitter won't accept the the serotonin. So SSRIs are serotonin reuptake inhibitors. All that means is it stops the serotonin from going back to the previous cell. It helps it go on. So what we know is anxiety and depression are both based on not absorbing the serotonin. So in your body, anxiety and depression look alike. So an SSRI and CBT, CBT and medication is the way that we treat any mood disorder. Right? Dopamine, that is the high that makes you feel so good. So what happens is a drug user, that chasing the high. So the first time I used the drug, my dopamine went through the ceiling, and the rest of my time I'm trying to chase that high, that original high. And what happens is even the things that used to give me pleasure don't give me pleasure anymore because my dopamine went through the roof, and it'll never get there again. Okay. Dopamine is it's a feel-good drug. Okay. We think that too much serotonin is the cause of autism. And we also think that too much dopamine or getting information through fast is the cause of schizophrenia, the neurotransmitters that affect it. Okay. Acetylcholine and GABA, I have not seen questions on those. You know, Maslow, his hierarchy of needs. What career theorist based her theory on Maslow?
Route.
Very good. And she did what?
And you said, and she did what?
What's the name of her theory?
Who's Route?
What's the name of her theory? Sorry, I couldn't stand up.
No, I'm thinking.
Skills and levels.
Absolutely.
Oh, that was the name of it? Okay. I don't think I did.
Or the needs approach, rather.
So you're motivated to get your needs met through your
Based
career.
off how you were raised.
Got it. If you grew up in a cold home, you'd have a career away from people.
Right.
Grew up in a warm home with people. Okay. And it's based off Maslow, but she is also a neo-Freudian, which means she believes in the unconscious stuff, but not the sex stuff. So with Maslow, remember at the bottom now, they're called the D needs, the deficits. And at the top, they're called the B needs, and to be a better person.
Is that something new? I don't remember learning.
Relatively new, yeah.
Okay.
So can you see my screen? So at the bottom, these are your deficits. So those are your D needs. B needs are at the top. So self-actualization is to be a better person. I don't have any deficits. All my deficits have been met. Okay. So remember, physiological, what does that term mean?
The things you physically need, food, shelter.
Physical.
Ding, ding. That's it. That my things that I need physically to survive. Absolutely. So D needs are now at the bottom, and then of course it's called the B needs at the top. Okay. No, it's the same theory. And I don't, did somebody ask Maslow if we could change it? I don't think so. You might see a question that his theory was very, very controversial when it first came out because everybody had worked with these very wealthy people. And when he said, well, maybe people need food and shelter first, they thought he was crazy. So remember Freud and Carl Rogers and all of those people working with very wealthy white, well, usually they were white men, but studying white women, because in that time you could put your wife in an insane asylum for little or no reason, right? You got a new chickie on the side and you decided your wife was crazy and you could lock her up. So then when we suggested that, we look at feeding people first, it was really very controversial. He's a humanistic. Okay. That means he believes in putting people first. Now, I usually discuss Havingshurst under the careers. He's my non-decisional guy. He said, you don't make a decision of your career. You don't make a decision of whether you learn to walk or talk or do whatever. You develop into it based on your culture. So in their careers, he's called my non-decisional guy. Okay, so he said, you know, between 4 and 5, you so under careers, he's called my non-decisional career guy, but he's non-decisional in everything. He said, you don't make a decision. You grow up, and based on your culture and your development, this is just what you do. Okay, so 0 to 5, you learn to walk, use the toilet, learn to talk.
But he would be considered. He would be considered a developmental theorist.
He's a developmental theorist,
Okay.
but there was no choice, and he's not as sticking with the age or stage. During 0 to 5, this is what happens based on your culture. Okay, but he is considered a developmental guy. Okay. Watson is the one that frightened poor little baby Albert. Remember him? Right. So Pavlov was first. Pavlov paired the dog with the sound, right? John Watson said, "Oh, well, that's pretty cool. Let me go back and see if I can try it with a human." And some mama said, "Oh, hey, take my baby and mess him up." It was done at Johns Hopkins University, a major university. Okay. So literally what happened is little Albert was not afraid of anything when he came in at all, not afraid of anything. It was a little baby. And the goal is every time when he first hung out with him, no big deal, nothing happened. But later, as he grew up, he would pair the animal with a big old gong sound, like a nasty sound, and it would scare him to death. Okay, so at first, the beginning experiment, they'd run like a horse, a cat. These big animals, and he wasn't afraid at all. But then he would bring in mice and little bitty things, and then pair that gong sound with the animals. And what he wanted he wanted to know if it lasted. So he sent him home and said, "Hey, why don't you bring him back a couple months later?" And a couple months later, he was still afraid of everything. The kid died at like 12. So I can't believe we live in a world that allowed experiment like that to happen, but that's really what happened. That is John Watson. I just want to know what mother said. "Okay, take my baby, mess him up. I don't mind." Okay. Okay. Thorndike, the law of effect. You know what that one means? The law of effect says if I want to change behavior, I need to pair the behavior with the consequences or the rewards right at the time the behavior happens. Okay. Do you remember back in grad school and you were writing papers and you turned in 3 or 4 papers before you got one back? And then she told you all the things you did wrong on the first paper, but you'd already turned in 3 or 4 different ones. If she had told you the minute that she graded your paper, then you would have got the others right. But I want to change behavior. I need to reward it or consequence it very close to the behavior. Okay. So if I want Johnny to behave, I can't say, "Wait till your daddy gets home." It's lost its punch. Okay. So that's the law of effect. I want to change behavior. It needs to happen as close to the behavior as possible. The law states that when a stimulus response is connected to a reward or a consequence, as soon as possible, that strengthens that connection. Okay. So that is the law of effect by Thorndike. Okay, so we talked about these, I think, the classical, the principles. So we talked about Pavlov, did we not, with the unconditioned, and then it became conditioned. Okay, so Pavlov is the dog, right? So what happened first, it was a unconditioned response. So unconditioned responses are things that your body does anyway. Okay, Pavlov didn't teach the dog to salivate. Dogs do that all the time anyway. All he did was pair two things together. Okay, so classical conditioning is you've got a natural response. Your body does it anyway. You've always had anxiety. Okay? The test didn't create anxiety. You've always had it. What has happened is reading Facebook, taking the test, hearing things. Now you have paired anxiety with a test. So now it's a paired response with a paired test. So it's called conditioned. Okay? So before, when you started school, you heard I took a test a long time from when I graduated from school, but that test didn't give you shivers the first time you heard about it. It was a stimuli, but it wasn't paired to anything. Okay, deal. But over time, whether it's taking the test or hearing about the test, now your response is anxiety. That's your body's response, and it's paired with the test. So that's why test anxiety is not considered a real thing. You have a generalized anxiety that you have paired with the test. The test did not create anxiety. You already had it. The test over here existed way before you even thought of. These two things were not together. But over time, now they're conditioned. So the UCR before, my body, my anxiety, CR afterwards, conditioned response. Okay, unconditioned, conditioned. Okay. So that's different than Skinner, because Skinner is then classical. I mean, Skinner is operant, rewards and consequences. Okay, reinforcement schedules, we went over those. Okay, so you get paid every 2 weeks. It's a fixed, it's a time, it's a fixed interval, right? If you're not sure when you're going to get paid, it's a variable interval, etc. Right? Then we go into Freud. That term shape. So if you are trying to get a child to do something that we want them to do, but it's not quite the behavior yet, we're shaping the behavior. So when a baby first takes their first steps, right? We're going steps. We don't want them to stop there, do we? We're just reinforcing the behavior to get what we really want is for them to be able to walk. So shaping behavior is rewarding it until I actually get them to what they want, to where I want them to be. Okay. Again, we talked about Freud, oral, anal, so orphan, any pretty little girl. Okay. The problem is if you get fixated in the stage, then as an adult, then you're always trying to feel this is the sexual erogenous zone. If your mother pulled the bottle out of your mouth too soon, you're fixated in that stage. So an adult who eats too much or drinks too much and says, I don't remember, is stuck in the oral stage. Fixated in the oral stage. The anal stage, your mommy took you off the potty too soon. So you walk around with a very tight sphincter muscle. OCD, walk around with the stick stuck up there, bottom. Okay. That's what Freud would say if you're stuck. So the phallic stage, we still have terms for phallic symbols. If a short man drives a big car, what do we call that? He's making up for something he don't have. That's what we come on, spout, right? Little man drives a big old F-250. We're like, so I didn't make it up. I'm just telling you what it's called, okay? So we use that term all the time because that stage wasn't satisfied. So now he has to compensate for it. That's what Freud said. That's where those things come from. The devil made me do it is from the id. Okay, because I did it because the devil made me do it. So oral, anal, phallic, orphan, Annie, pretty little girl, okay, the stages. And the first 3 stages line up with Erickson. Okay, we'll get to Erickson, but remember, Erickson was a neo-Freudian. He went to school with Anna Freud. So those first 3 stages of Freud will line up with the first 3 stages of Erickson. So orphan or OAP, we'll go back and look at Erickson stages. Okay. In the phallic stage, he said that is where I am fully sexually developed by the time I'm 5. I'm 58 and I'm still trying to figure it out, but hey, Freud said 5. So, little girl is in love with her father. That's called the Electra. Little boy is in love with his mother, and that's called the Oedipus. It starts with the O, but it's still pronounced Oedipus. The boy is afraid that the father will find out. And what will the father do if he finds out? Cut off his penis. Castrate him. Again, I don't make it up, okay? So, so a question that says a little boy, a 5-year-old is having to have surgery, and they're going to put a needle in his groin area. He's terrified. What's he afraid of? It's not the pain. According to Freud, he's afraid he's going to wake up and dad cut his penis off. Okay. The little girl has penis envy. She wants to have a penis like her dad. Okay. Both of those stages are satisfied then by identifying with the same sex parent. So the time that your age of 5, then you realize you're with your mom, you have mom parts, and you're with your dad. So that's the identification with that. That's how it ends up. Okay. In the latency stage, nothing happens. The word latent means hidden. Okay. Manifest means it's out there. I can see it. Latent means hidden. So then at that stage, nothing visually is happening to your body. And in actual sex stage, any time of actual sex penetration is going to be what's the term? So genital is anything sex. Masturbation is going to be anything in the phallic stage. Okay. Other terms, that word libido. Okay, it's the basic energy of force of life. We all know our libido to be known as our sex drive, right? If you have low libido, that's your sex drive. Because Freud said that was the basis of life. That life didn't go on if that energy wasn't transferred. Again, erogenous zones, that's your mouth, your anus, and your genitals. Right? Our defense mechanisms, and then Erickson, okay? So most people struggle with Erickson. People ask me all the time if there's an easy way to remember them. And I tell you the first 3, because we're going to line them up with Freud. And if you can figure out where you're at and go backwards and forwards from there, that's the best way to figure it out. Okay. Now, remember with Erickson, you can get stuck in a stage. So if you are 60 and you never fell in love, you are still stuck in the intimacy stage because you never satisfied it. You never met that. So he called it crisis. So if you didn't go through the stage appropriately, then it was a crisis. So then, the stage, like I said, the first 3 line up with Freud. So think of trust versus mistrust as the oral stage. Right? So kids in that stage putting things in their mouth. So what happens though, if babies cry and cry and cry and you never come, they grow up thinking the world is a scary place. So with Erickson, it's either or. So either you develop trust or you develop mistrust. And then again, if that's not satisfied, you're stuck there. You can be an adult who never learned to trust anybody because no one ever came to you when you cried. Okay. The second one, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Think of potty training. Okay. That's 18 months to 3. So autonomy, I put on my big old Barbie panties. Look at me. I'm so good. I'm potty trained and I have an accident. So I'm trying to be autonomous. I'm trying to, grow up and be 2. but I will feel shame and doubt if you shame me, Mom. Okay. Initiative versus guilt, that's 3 to 5. That's the phallic stage. Okay. So initiative, the question in the 750 book talks about the 3-year-old asked something about what is sex or where do babies come from? And the mama says, well, no, you don't need to know that. Right. So she took initiative and then felt guilty because of the response. So those are the first 3 that line up with Freud, OAP. Now at 5, I start elementary school. And what I started in elementary school, I believe that I'm trying to figure out what I'm good at. So between elementary school and early elementary school and middle school, I'm searching for my industry. So usually I ask you guys, so when you were younger, what do you remember about elementary school? What were you good at? Elementary to middle school. What were you good at? If I go back to your school and I say, y'all remember the little debater, what was she known for?
What was I known for? What was I good at?
This should be the same thing, so I don't
know. I mean, I talked a lot, so I'm sure I was probably known for that. But I would say good at reading.
Okay. So you figured out your industry. Okay. Me too, Davida. I could read before I started kindergarten. I loved reading. Too. If someone had told me I could be a college professor, I would have never worked. I just gone all through school and just go teach college. I swear. So absolutely. And I went to predominantly white school. Okay. So I'm actually 50. I'll be 58. I started elementary school in 1970. So for my school, that was the first year of integration. So I had teachers that had never seen anybody that looked like me. Okay. So yeah, it was so much fun. Okay. So no trauma at all. But definitely the thought was, I'm 5'9". I've been 5'9" since I was in 5th grade. Okay. 5'9", wear a size 10 shoe, and I was usually a stick. Okay. So everybody, of course, when they first saw me, they put me on their volleyball team, basketball team, kickball team, because I got to be good in sports. No. So I'm glad I found out school was my thing, because I was surrounded with people who assumed that since I was this way, that I was good at sports, and I was not. So that's what she said. He said, if you don't find what you're good at in those early stages, you'll feel inferior forever. Okay. What were you good at, Janetta?
Spelling. I was known for like the spelling bees. I was always in the spelling bees.
Yeah, yes. Remember little scripts book, and you had all the words and you had like absolutely. And you, Erica?
We're talking education. I think I was good at
anything.
Oh, anything.
So industry is what, so the way that I help you try to remember it is think of your town's industry. What is your town known for? Okay, so that's what he said. Your industry is what you were good at, how you figured out who you were in between elementary and middle school.
I was good at basketball.
There we go. Okay. So one of the things that really bothers me when I work with families is you have a kid who is making C's in school but trying really hard, but school's just not their thing. And the one thing they're good at is sports, and mom pulls them out of sports. It's like everybody needs a place to feel good about themselves. And school is not for everybody. Let's face facts. So when I work with parents, we can consequence kids, of course, but if they're really giving all of their effort to school, don't pull them out to one place that gives them some self-esteem. Okay, so very good. I want you to remember that industry, okay? What you're good for. What is your town known for? I live in Chattanooga. We are the home of the Coca-Cola bottling company. So the Coca-Cola started in Atlanta, and the rich people in Chattanooga bought the rights to bottle Coke for $1. So it's a huge industry. A lot of people here got rich. But I'm not from here. And when I first moved here, I would have dinner parties and I'd serve Pepsi. I liked Pepsi, okay? And I learned quickly that in this town, it's Coke. And it's always called Coke. It's orange Coke or red Coke or grape Coke, but it's still Coke. Everything is Coke. There's no other thing. So that's the industry. So remember that. Okay. So now that I know what I'm good at. So if you look at the virtues, right? Hope, will, purpose, and 5 of 13, I know what I'm good at. I'm competent in one area. So then I go into 13 to 21, which is industry versus confusion. I'm sorry, wow, identity versus confusion. So what I'm looking at that stage is who I am. At 13, 14, 15, you're trying to blend in and be like everybody else. By the time that you are 21, you don't want to be like anybody else, right? Okay, so that is 13 to 21. And then at from 21 to from 13 to 21, if I learn who I am and then who I am attracted to, then I can fall in love. And that's the next stage, intimacy versus isolation. Then you get to my age. I'm in that age group, 40 to 65. Okay. So the generativity is living a legacy for future generations. Still working hard, still going up the ladder, but worrying about leaving a legacy. People that are stagnant do not. And the last stage, sometimes it's called ego integrity versus despair, or sometimes just integrity. So again, I'm looking back over my life. Did I like the way that I lived my life? Okay. If I did, then I'm good. It's ego integrity. But there are some people that are just too mean to die, right? Too angry with the world to die. So that's then my despair. Okay. Not an easy way to remember them. I'm sorry. I wish there was. There's just not. Okay. But again, know the first 3, know where you're at, and then know where your friends and family are at. Because if you can have a conversation with somebody and say, oh, yeah, you're in the identity stage. But also remember, you have to know the ages, but they might not line up, right? Because I can be 50 and never had a relationship and still be stuck in the intimacy stage. If I don't master the stage, I get stuck there. And he called it a crisis. So the identity crisis is actually between 13 and 21, because I don't know who I am. It's not as an older, right? Identity crisis is an Erickson term. Okay, we did Piaget already, schema. We did Kohlberg. Okay. Daniel Levinson, he wrote The Seasons of a Man's Life. Basically what he said, and I'm not seeing the ages being on there, basically what he says is that if you have a crisis in life, you're going to have a crisis at all the times that you change. So if from 17 to 21, when you grew up, you had a crisis. Then the next stage, 40 to 65, you'll have a crisis. Okay. That some men just have those crises. Okay. So he just said these are seasons of a man's life, and this is just what you go through. He only wrote the book about men. Okay. And then the midlife crisis, he said, was between 40 and 65. Braun van Bremer did our eco map. That's that micro, meso, as we get bigger, right? That's Braun van Bremer, our ecological system. Bandura is our social learning theory. We talked about that earlier with that question we saw on, how the kid learned from watching mother. Okay. And that term self-efficacy, we learned that in careers also. Self-efficacy is the belief that you can do it. You might not be the smartest one in the bunch. It may take you longer than other people, but you can do it. Okay. William Perry is one of my favorites. William Perry was a college professor. And one of my favorites because he looked at those 4 years of college. And the book talks about it. There we go. So that first year of college, it's called dualism. And that first year of college, my students think I'm the smartest thing ever. They listen to whatever I say. They think that if I say the grass is green, oh really, Dr. Pam? Oh really, Dr. Pam? Oh my gosh, you're amazing. I really believe everything you say. If you remember being a freshman and you thought your teacher was the greatest thing ever. However, that kids continue to grow. And the goal of college is to raise thinkers, not people who are just going to do as you're taught to do. So at some point, the goal is we want you to question your teacher. So that first stage is dualism. So that you really believe that your teacher is absolutely right. She is the best thing ever. There's nothing that she can't tell you. The second stage, what's the book, is then relativism. So he didn't use that one. That's not right. Come on. So what he wanted you to do was to be committed to be thinkers, free thinkers. Okay, so that first stage is called dualism. The second one is called multiplicity. That's when you begin to question everybody and everything that you thought you knew. And then the third stage is relativism. And what that point is, then you're trying to really think like, okay, is this really what I need to know? Is this really important to me? And the last stage is then going to be commitment to relativism. So at the fourth stage, when I'm a senior, I'm always questioning everything. So you go from this very 18-year-old freshman, typical college kid who believes everything the college professor says. Then you begin to question the things. And then you really begin to look at how it relates to your life. And the last one is committed to always asking questions. We want to raise thinkers, not people who just simply follow the rules. Okay, that's William Perry. I'll put these in the chat box. Okay. I went over the women that you need to know. Judith Jordan, I know the whole paragraph on her, but I have never seen her on the test. Ever. Yep. Okay, so there's a couple of things in there, and then there are terms in there that we just need to know. Okay, so finish that chapter by really going over the terms. Okay, and a lot of these things like propinquity, that has to do with how close we are physically, space, ego syntonic and ego dystonic. So all personality disorders are ego syntonic. It's in sync with your ego. They're not coming for treatment because they don't think they have a problem. Ego dystonic, I don't like this, I'm coming for treatment. Okay. Anorexics, it's ego syntonic. They weigh 4 pounds and they don't think they need treatment. They still think they're fat. So your ego, Freud, in sync with your ego means I don't have a problem. Okay. Yeah, I weigh 4 pounds, but I still think I'm fat. Ego dystonic, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. They don't like it. I don't like this, so I'm coming for treatment. Okay. Again, equal finality, that term, it's a systems theory term. It means that we all get to the same place just through different steps. The term etiology is the cause. So epidemiology is the spread of the disease. Etiology is the cause. So we don't know the causes of most of our diseases. We don't know the etiology of schizophrenia. We don't know what causes it. We have some ideas, but we don't know the cause. Dr. Fauci was an epidemiologist. He studied the spread of diseases. Okay, so the cause of COVID is the etiology, which we still don't know, and epidemiology is the spread. The term psychopathology for your pathology literally means, what is your crazy? The DSM is a list of pathological illnesses. Your pathology, that is your crazy. Okay, so prevalence, incidence. So this was great during COVID because Trump would use these things when he felt convenient for him. So your prevalence is actually the percentage. So if 20% of people in America had COVID, that's a lot different than 20% of people on a small island, right? So the prevalence is the percent of it. The incident is the actual number of cases. Okay, so we've had 5 new cases. Again, if you have 5 new cases in America, it may not be a big deal, but if you have 5 new cases in a country like Bali, it's a huge deal. So prevalence is percentage, incidence is the actual amount of times it happens. Right? We can talk about rape cases on college campuses. The prevalence is the percentage, but the incidents are how many actual cases have been reported. Your prognosis, so your diagnosis is the problem, right? They diagnose you. The prognosis is what's going to happen. Am I going to get better or not, doctor? Diagnosis, problem, prognosis, am I going to get better or not? Again, midlife crisis, right? Again, that was the same thing that that's Daniel Levson, what he talked about. He only talked about men, but women also may have a painful midlife crisis. Propinquity is space. It's literally proxemics. One of the things that we know is that people fall in love with people just because they're in their space all the time. I work with them every day at work, and then we fell in love. Your EQ is, there's not a number for that one, but your EQ means how intelligent are you with emotions? Are you able to read other people's emotions and share your emotions properly? Your IQ, of course, is then your, that's the WISC for children. I'm sorry, yes, WISC for children and WACE for adults. Okay, so I pretty much went over that, pick up a couple of things of those terms in the bottom. I'll be sure and talk about next week when it looks at, I'll go over the few of the DSM questions. There's only about 4 or 5. There's really not many at all. Okay, I'm going to put a practice test in the chat box for you to go over, and we can talk about it next week. So we've still got assessment and research we want to cover. Okay, and again, I want to keep doing practice questions till we get through all of those and just go back and read this. So projective tests, personality tests, all of those things we're going to pick up an assessment as well. Okay. And treatment plan, the continuum of care talks about the least restrictive setting. So, right, if a person doesn't need to be in a residential facility, we can't put them there. It's the least restrictive setting. Okay, and again, the DSM in the book, you don't need to know all of these. It's really, you're going to get so few questions on the DSM on this one. Okay, questions? Okay, I'll put a lot in your chat box, guys. And I know it's getting tough, right? We gotta go back and remember all the things. I keep adding new things on. I apologize, but you'll have everything you need to know. Just watch the video 27 times.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you. Good night.